folks, to properly understand this, you need to understand that this is not intended for public viewing. This was intended to train appointed bureaucrats, appointed true believers, okay? Who, well, are basically supposed to be government yes men. They're supposed to just do whatever it is they're told to do by the Trump administration. So, that's exactly what we're going to put our mindset in. That's our mind space, our mind palace, if you will. And let's go. I might sneeze, and I apologize. I sneezed, and I apologize. Whew. All right. And yes, these come to us courtesy of ProPublica. Thank God.
Consider this whole situation. There are just between 3,000 and 4,000 political appointees.
Can I? Okay. I know that he's not said anything yet. But can I just say the stylistic changes between these videos is very jarring to me. Like, real quick, if you'll indulge me, folks. Okay?
Is one of our duties as a communicator. When you
This weird hostage gunpoint style that they're doing for this one.
Policies out
you
there.
got these
so
two
that we
guys in like, I don't even know what to call this. A set? Is this a set? Is this like some politician's shed? I don't know. It's weird and off-putting, you know? Are they in a bunker somewhere? Who can say? Then there's this guy.
And appeal in.
Who gets like a blurred background to like, you know, have some dignity. And then you have
called
these two horribly lit women. Like the stylistic changes between all of these videos are like, it's fascinating to me as somebody who cares about like visual storytelling. Like there's a lot of different artistic decisions being made here. And I say that with all
Instance of
the salt in the universe.
want to have.
there
All right. But anyway, then we get to this guy, and I'm about to say something maybe a little
Consider
mean.
this whole...
For whatever reason, this is shot like a training video from the 1990s intended for McDonald's employees. Like, that's what he looks like to me right now.
Whole situation. There are just between 3,000 and 4,000 political appointees, sitting atop millions of career federal employees and bureaucrats.
In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle.
Yeah, they reused the set from the priest guy, but they changed the lighting pretty dramatically. And it's it's weird to me. Like,
in America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving.
a nation is only living as long as it's alive.
Only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger.
This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper.
Whether we go forward together with courage or turn back to policies that weakened our economy, diminished our leadership in the world, America's future will be in your...
God, it is very funny that even in these training videos, they're like attacking Joe Biden. Like, even Project 2025 couldn't like hurriedly edit like a new intro for these videos that included like Kamala Harris. They had to stick with Joe Biden, like tripping.
Your hands.
Do you know that people die when they're killed? It's news to me. It's a visual assault to the eyes. Get ready for a mental assault on your brain.
Hi, my name is Spencer Cradian, and I...
Like, why does this guy get like a table with law books on it? Like why he gets like professional lighting? It's shitty professional lighting, but it's professional lighting.
serve at the Heritage Foundation.
Okay, who is this cretin? Also, is his name... I said that before realizing his name is literally Cretin. Maybe it's... Here, how does he say it?
Hi, my name is Spencer Cradian, and I serve...
Oh, sure. That's how you pronounce it. Mm-hmm. Sure, bud. Okay. Mm-hmm. These people cannot be real. This is like the other day when we found that guy who is named McName. His name was literally like Andrew McName. These people all sound like people I'd be like mentally being like, okay, I need a random name for this guy in a D&D campaign. We'll call him Bruce McName Guy. No, I can't call him that. That's too on the nose. But these guys all have that exact name. Okay. Spencer Cretin. So, as we have been discovering, going through all these videos, every single one of these speakers is like a little demon. Like they're not, they're bad. They're like career-long thinkers and thought leaders who worked at think tanks for conservatives that have, and basically their entire lives have been cut checks from billionaires in order to mainstream conservative ideology. Now, who is this guy? Oh boy. You know, it's really not good when you Google someone's name and one of the top results is from the Hungarian Conservative. Okay, if you guys don't know, Viktor Orban in Hungary is backed by the conservatives. And he's a dictator. He has essentially like seized power. And Hungary is the model that American conservatives want to use to install Trump as a dictator, okay? Yeah, Orban is a literal fascist. So I guess it's not surprising that American conservatives looked to, the fascist movement in Hungary for, support, whatnot, but when this guy's being endorsed by Hungarian conservatives, what I need you to know is like that's basically like getting endorsed in the 1930s by I don't know, I'm just gonna fish around here, like Mussolini's Italy. It's like being endorsed by Franco's Spain. It's not a good thing to be endorsed by. So anyway, all right. So yes, you're evil. Tell us more.
Serve at the Heritage Foundation as Associate Director of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project.
Oh, okay. And he was he basically was the second in command of making this fascist takeover plan. Gotcha.
Project 2025. This is a coalition of more than 40 conservative organizations in DC.
By the way, when he says 40 conservative organizations, what he really means is 40 conservative think tanks that are funded by billionaire special interests like, the fracking industry or, fossil fuels or, a lot of the big money that, thrives on climate change denial and ginning up hatred for minorities. Those industries.
And out of D.C. And our goal is to ensure that the conservative administration that takes office in January of 2025 is ready on day one. Ready with people, ready with policy, and ready with plans. Project 2025 is organized into 4 pillars. Pillar 1 is a policy book. It's going to be released in the spring of 2023, and it's going to outline a conservative vision of success at each federal agency. We have almost 400 people who are contributing to this policy book. It's a lot to manage. Pillar 2 is a personnel database. We want Mr. and Mrs. Smith to come to Washington, and we're going to go out and identify and recruit people to be.
Yeah, so what he's describing here is the process by which Trump loyalists who are ideologically, rabidly in favor of doing Donald Trump's bidding have been vetted by this project in order to have them ready to be appointed on day one, so that Donald Trump can basically just be like, hey, all these people are in charge now, and kick out all of the old guard bureaucrats that currently head a lot of those divisions. Yeah, they're pre-vetting. They don't have to go looking on day one. They have everyone already selected
in this personnel database.
Yeah, they're having their lists of all of the true believers.
People at high levels, people at low levels, and everybody in between. Pillar 3 is a series of trainings, just like this video. These are important because we want the people who go to Washington in 2025 to serve the next president to be well-trained, to know what to expect, and to have an idea of what they can do to restore greatness to our country. And then Pillar 4 is a playbook, a game plan for each federal agency in more detail than Pillar 1.
Yeah, basically what they want to do here is basically give people a roadmap, and by give the appointees that they want to place in positions of power a roadmap so that the corporations that are backing this entire movement and have spent millions upon millions of dollars to get this far, make sure that their agendas are fulfilled within that first 6 months. As long as they are able to get their money, make their profits, that's enough, And how this isn't considered a form of sedition is beyond me. I mean, in spirit it is, right? But in practice, and it is all done legally. And that's the unfortunate thing, We should have a bunch of laws that prevent anything like this from remotely being possible. But, we have Citizens United that allowed, billionaires to funnel money into these political projects. You have, and then you have, capitalist incentive. You have corruption in the government. You've got a whole slew of issues where basically the Republican Party has become a vehicle for special interest groups to achieve their goals. And I'm not saying that the Democratic Party is that much better, but it is a bit better on that. Not a whole lot better, but a bit better.
Starting with the official transition period and going out all the way the first 6 months of the new administration. We need to know what at each agency needs to happen on day 1. What needs to happen on day 2, day 5, day 10? Who are the people who need to be in place, the positions that need to be filled immediately? That's Pillar 4. Each of these pillars plays a vital role.
Which positions need to be filled immediately? Smuggy face.
In Project 2025. By way of introduction, I'm a former special assistant to President Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, free markets now. That's why I'm a big believer of in like democracy in the workplace. I think the way to counteract these special interest groups is more democracy. You know, like that's. I think that the profit motive is too strong in capitalism to prevent corruption. Or yeah. No, I didn't phrase that right. The profit motive under capitalism is too powerful and will override any legal concerns under capitalism. There we go.
And Associate Director of Presidential Personnel. It was my job to staff the administration for the president at various federal agencies. And I'm honored to be doing much of the same work in my role with Project 2025 from outside of government. One of the highlights of my time in the White House was that I got to work with Caitlin Stumpf. She was my deputy. And she's now also...
Caitlin Stumpf? Again, these people don't have real names.
Also here with me at the Heritage Foundation. And the two of us are going to be doing this video together. Now, as we think about the federal...
Are you? Is she... Why is she not here?
Government, we need to think about the federal workforce. It has about 2 million full-time non-military employees. And when you add in the contractors, the number is well more than 10 million. People. That's a lot of people.
True.
But the American people don't elect the bureaucrats. They don't elect the federal contractors. They elect a president. And the president's job is to faithfully execute the laws of our country.
Again, what he's describing here is like, hey guys, here's how we can politicize the bureaucracy so that we can rig the system in our favor. Effectively, this is their last Hail Mary attempt to take over the government. Like, if they aren't able to do this, if they aren't able to take power, they're done. They're done, and they know it. They know it. So what they're doing here is they're saying, hey, we need to rig the game in our favor now, or we will never be in power again. We will not be able to do this again. That is the subtext of this entire Project 2025. They've put everything they have into this. This is why Project 2025 is basically this monster created by an amalgamation of like 40 of these special interest groups backed by billionaires and millionaires, you know? They've basically assembled an evil Voltron to try and take over the government. They just have to wait until 2029. They can't. They aren't going to have Trump. Trump is the only thing holding together the Republican Party. When they tried to replace Trump with Ron DeSantis, they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. That man had like the charisma of like a wet paper bag. They've got no one else can unite the Republican base. And right now it's currently trying to rip itself apart because you have part of the base that is represented by like the Daily Wire and PragerU, you know, and they are kind of a more classical conservative. You know, they're evil, but they're more of a classical conservative. And then you have like the Candace Owenses. And you guys know, we just watched one of her interviews, okay? She's very far gone. Like the anti-Semitic Nazi vibes are off the charts, okay? These two factions of conservatism are like the main factions at play, and they cannot work together under anyone except for Donald Trump. It's kind of a now or never proposition.
The president, of course, does not have the hours in the day to personally perform every function of government. So he outsources that to the bureaucracy by necessity, to all of those federal employees and contractors. But he does have some help. Helping him are between 3,000 and 4,000 political
I
appointees.
mean, guys, like, trans issues are already a losing thing for conservatives right now. And 4 more years of them losing is not going to bring the party together. They've got nothing.
These are the president's people, the people he brings with him to Washington, and they occupy government jobs. But they're not like what we might call the normal federal employees. They serve in accepted roles. Now, in Washington, D.C., in this town, you frequently hear people say, "My dad worked for 30 years at the Department of Labor," or "My sister served 5 different presidents as a Foreign Service officer." Well, chances are that is referring to federal employees who are hired through the normal hiring process. There are all sorts of rules and regulations that govern that process. If you want to
Basically, what he's trying to explain to the people watching this video is that, hey, yeah, it's actually really hard for us to get a bunch of true believers into government office. It's actually really, really difficult for us to do that by normal means. So thus, we need to install true believers via the executive branch. He's literally talking about the need to take over government with Donald Trump. Like, Donald Trump will enable them to do the takeover.
federal job, they look at your qualifications, your expertise, your work history, your salary history. It's supposed to be competitive and objective. If the Department of Energy is...
Yeah, I think that's a more likely scenario, Amber Brains. Like, if the Republican Party loses, you're going to get, like, a factionalization across state lines. And you're going to have different enclaves in different states of, like, different kinds of conservative beliefs. You know, you'll get, like, a QAnon state. You'll get the Florida man state, which obviously will be Florida, at least until it's underwater. And then you'll get, like, a bunch of these different factions that are just absolutely batshit that run their state into the ground, like they did with Kansas, by the way. I know many people might not remember, but, like, Republicans got a supermajority in Kansas like 12 years ago, and then proceeded to enact all of their conservative wet dreams in the state, and it ruined things to such a degree that they've had to backtrack on like 80% of them. And they're gonna do that, but like 100 times worse in different states across America. You know, you might see like the rise of the is it called the Greater Idaho movement or something like that? There's like a secessionist movement over on the West Coast to form like a breakaway state that actually has quite a lot of gas in it. Greater Idaho Project. Yep, those guys are whack jobs, and like, is it Greater Oregon or Greater Idaho? I don't know. It's something like that. It's like a whole weird thing. Like, the factions are kind of already there. And I think if Trump isn't there to unify them, a lot of the energy is going to go into more local efforts.
Hiring a nuclear engineer who's going to be handling radioactive waste. Clearly, there are some very specific qualifications that are needed.
Did he literally just look into the camera and tell these people, look, you're not going to be doing rocket science, so we could appoint real dipshits here?
If the IRS is hiring an HR manager, perhaps less expertise is needed. But the point is that those federal employees are not at risk of losing their jobs with a change in presidential administration. In fact, they have incredible job security. You've probably read stories or heard examples, but the federal government is notorious for its inability to fire virtually anybody. Even if an employee is in trouble, there are hearings, appeals, benefit of the doubt always granted, and it's very rare that the federal workforce will actually fire one of its own.
I feel like that's kind of a good thing, though. Gives you a lot of job stability.
But accepted service, the kind that political appointees...
Why is he speaking like this? You mean slowly and clearly? It's because he knows that this video is intended for morons. He knows exactly what kind of person is signing up to be one of these true believers to be appointed. And he knows that they are like bottom of the barrel intellectually.
Engage in is not subject to these same rules and these same standards. These 3,000 to 4,000 appointees serve at the pleasure of the president, and they can be removed by the president at any time, so they don't enjoy the usual perks of federal service. But the converse of that, the 3,000 to 4,000 political appointees don't apply through the competitive process. Their qualifications are not evaluated by career federal HR departments.
Yeah, you know, they're going for the kind of people who here in Minnesota we'd say they're the kind of people who'd lick a lamppost in winter. You know, they're the kind of people who'd freeze their tongue to ice cold metal. That's a thing they'd do.
They're there because the president wants them there, and they serve the president. Consider this whole situation. There are just between 3,000 and 4,000 political appointees, sitting atop millions.
He keeps saying that. Look, we only need 3,000 to 4,000 of you. We need 3,000 to 4,000 of the biggest morons we can find, okay?
Of career federal employees and bureaucrats. Is that really enough? The president brought those few thousand people with him to change the direction of the government, and the president is expected to deliver what he ran on. The appointees are the ones who make it happen, those 3,000 to 4,000 people. In fact, it would be impossible for the president to change anything without them. Is 3,000 to 4,000 political appointees enough to turn around that federal battleship? Think about it. These are the only people at their agency who are accountable to the president and who serve at his pleasure. What?
Please stop using that term, that turn of phrase. Please stop. Please. I'm begging you to stop talking about serving at the pleasure of Donald Trump. Okay? It really does sound like you're not, when you say it repeatedly like that, it really sounds like you're talking about something else.
What does the number of appointees suggest about the president's accountability to the people who really matter, the voters? Or imagine what would happen if almost all federal employees opposed a certain president. Would you bet on just a few thousand people to overcome the massive federal bureaucracy? Some people want to reduce the number of political appointees or reclassify more positions as reserved for career employees and not political appointees. Some on the right even say that we, because we believe in small government, should just lead by example and not fill certain political positions. I suggest that it would be almost impossible to bring any conservative change to America if the president did that. So, who are these political appointees? Well, some you've heard of. Some are household names. The Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, really any cabinet secretary. But those are just a small fraction of all political appointees. Most political appointees are people you haven't heard of. Now, the ones I mentioned, like the cabinet level people, those are what we call PASs, or Presidential Appointment with Senate Confirmation. Their offices are created by statute, and their salary is set by law. In addition to presidential...
Hey, so I know, again, this is a very minor aesthetic thing about these videos, but I just can't stop thinking about how weird they are. Sometimes they do like this overlay. And like this is objectively a better way to do it, where like they're overlaying the screen and like as he's saying the points like appear on the screen. Like this is a better way to do it. But in like the last 3 videos, they've just awkwardly inserted like the PowerPoint slide and accompanied by like 6 to 10 seconds of silence.
Presidential appointments with Senate confirmation. There are also
Like, why'd
PAs,
this guy get rizzed up?
presidential appointments that don't require Senate confirmation. An example of a PAS is the Deputy Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. An example of a PA, presidential appointment without Senate confirmation, is the Treasurer of the United States. But that's not all the political appointees. The ones who aren't appointed by the president directly are hired under various authorities, various hiring authorities. The most common authority is Schedule C. This refers to accepted federal service that is confidential or policymaking in nature. Schedule Cs include 22-year-olds just out of college working their first job. They include seasoned veterans of multiple administrations who've come out of retirement to work for the president they love. And they include everybody in between. A majority of political appointees are Schedule C appointees.
Okay.
Another prominent hiring authority that is used for political appointees is the Senior Executive Service, or SES, specifically non-career SES. The Senior Executive Service was established during the presidency of Jimmy Carter in the 1970s, and it was designed to ensure that well-qualified people could serve in the federal government at executive levels above the normal civil service. About 10% of SESs can be non-career or political. So a good percentage of political appointees are hired under SES authority. Many senior political appointees, not exactly household names, but known among the Beltway political class, are non-career SES appointees.
He looks nervous because he knows exactly what he's proposing with this project.
Now, every 4 years, the government publishes a report to Congress on policy and supporting positions. It's informally known as the Plum Book, and I highly recommend that you check it out. In December of 2020, the most recent Plum Book, across all federal agencies, there were 1,118 PAS positions, presidential appointment with Senate confirmation. There were 354 PA positions, presidential appointment without Senate confirmation. There were 724 non-career SES positions, and there were 1,566 Schedule C positions. That's a total of 3,762, right between that 3,000 to 4,000 number that I mentioned earlier.
Well, keep in mind, John Bainbridge, this isn't intended for us. This is intended for the fervent believers. You know, this is intended for people who are, like, committed to this, but know exactly dick about government work. You know, this is where they're at. You know, like, they need to start from like square one and clearly enunciate while describing the processes. Otherwise, the people who are watching this won't know what to do. So, like, when we talk about, like, the banality of evil, like, that's what this is. It's literally, it's this. We're looking at the banal evil.
Now, the federal bureaucracy is very complicated, and there are all sorts of rules about creating new positions
no one with Riz
that
wants
are
to be involved
accepted.
in this.
There are all sorts of rules about what happens.
Like keep in mind, all of the people that work with Project 2025 are like Rizless nerds who are paid to be wrong about stuff. Like, that's their entire job, is to be wrong about things and to write papers about how actually being wrong about a particular topic is good, you know?
When someone who's nominated for a Senate confirmed position is still awaiting confirmation by the Senate, and who can be acting in that role in the meantime. But those are stories for a different video. For now, think about those approximately 3,700 political appointees that I mentioned. They serve at the pleasure of the president. Sometimes we all get a reminder that they serve at the pleasure of the president, like when the president fires a
Paladin Lust. Yeah. These are the people who are so deep in the cult, they're going to make $45,000 per year for an impossibly low-ranking and shitty position in one of the most expensive cities in America to basically rubber stamp deregulation written by ALEC until they're ultimately downsized as part of phases 2 or 3. Yeah, I think the comparison to Scientology's Sea Org is completely and utterly warranted here. They're basically just looking for shock troops to bureaucratically seize control of the government. And once they have control, they don't really care what happens to these people.
cabinet secretary. But in fact, all political appointees serve at the pleasure of the president. What must they be thinking about as they go into their office every morning? What pitfalls do they need to watch out for? And how on earth did they get there in the first place? Well, as I mentioned, Caitlin Stumpf was my deputy at the White House and is now my colleague at the Heritage Foundation. And Caitlin's going to explain a little more about how these people did get to where they are.
So, we just learned about several types of federal jobs. And I bet you're wondering, how can I obtain a political appointment in the next presidential administration? Well, the answer is PPO. PPO stands for the Presidential Personnel Office. It's an office in the White House that acts on behalf of the president to meet his staffing needs.
Do you think that she wears that shirt because at some point in her life she was hunted for sport? Did she play the most dangerous game and she won and that earned her a position in the administration? And now she's always just a little bit worried that one of her colleagues might do it again.
It is structured like many other offices in the White House. There's a director who's an assistant to the president, perhaps a deputy director, and
Also, her fashion would be fine, but not like this.
Associate directors who are often special assistants to the president, and various other staff who report to the director and his associates. The main mission of PPO is to identify, recruit, and evaluate candidates for all political appointments and nominations across the federal government. Some questions that PPO may help answer include: who will be the ambassador to France? Who will be the chief of staff at the Department of Commerce? Who will serve as a senior advisor to the Secretary of the Treasury? And who will fill that entry-level position at the Department of Housing and Urban Development? This is where PPO comes in. Now, each role is unique. And for those higher level positions, such as the ones in the president's cabinet, the president likes to select those people himself. However, PPO can still have a role to play here. They can still identify and pass along candidates to be interviewed by the president. It depends on the administration, but the director of PPO and the president will meet to go over 3 important topics: new and upcoming vacancies, the ongoing nomination process, and how the political appointees across the federal government are serving the president. There are 2 important points to remember when thinking about PPO and staffing. First, for higher level positions that require Senate confirmation, it is up to the Senate to determine when to convene and vote on these nominees. Second, PPO focuses on federal agency hiring, not White House hiring. So, each head of every White House...
If you're wondering why they're going into explicit detail about all of this, to a degree, like I feel like at this point in the video, we get it. You know, we understand. We understand what you're going for. But I feel like they're having to go into excruciating levels of detail because they know that there are going to be people who sign up for this and think that they're going to be in the White House. You know? They know that there are going to be, like, MAGA folk who sign up to be part of this, who think that they are going to be, like, in the room with Donald Trump. You know, and they need to set the expectations. You're here to be a bureaucrat. No one's going to know who you are. But you've done a very good job by helping us do a fascist takeover of America.
Office is able to staff his or her own office. PPO shapes the various federal agencies because it is the entity that acts on behalf of the president to ensure robust and effective political management of those agencies. We've also discussed the difference between accepted federal service and the regular career federal hiring process. An important difference to remember is who does the evaluation of a candidate's qualifications. When it comes to political appointments, PPO is the agency, acting on behalf of the president, determining if a candidate is qualified. It's not relevant if the media or other people in the administration disagree about a person's qualifications. If PPO believes in them, then they have the job. Now, a brief digression is in order here. We just talked about political hiring, which PPO does. But PPO still works with the Office of Personnel Management, or OPM. That office is responsible for creating HR policy for all federal employees. Suppose you have a federal employee who is delinquent or failing at their job. How many warnings should be issued to this person? Who should be responsible in issuing them? What if the employee alleges that despite what it looks like, they are actually suffering from retaliation or discrimination based on their sex or race? OPM, OPM, OPM. OPM is the entity.
Do conservatives not know that you can make those allegations at any job? Like you are supposed to have legal protections for those things?
That would deal with all of these questions. One thing we understood during our time in the Trump administration is the importance of retaining political control over OPM. There were several career employees in powerful positions that hindered the work of the president and his staff. These were later replaced by political appointees. OPM is the federal entity that actually processes the paperwork of political appointees once PPO has selected them. It is vital for PPO and political leadership of OPM to have a productive working relationship and to speak regularly about personnel strategy. If PPO is the who, OPM is the how. Once PPO selects someone to be hired, OPM is responsible for onboarding them. There are many issues that affect the federal workforce that go beyond the typical HR issues we are all familiar with.
Okay.
For example, how many political appointees are there? Can there be...
So basically, this seems like they are setting out how you would undo workplace protections in the government in order to cull the dead weight of government. That's basically what this seems like. You know? Welcome, Vosh Raiders. Hello, hello. We're going over every video in Project 2025. You know, as many as I can get through tonight. And we'll probably continue tomorrow. Welcome, folks. Make yourselves comfortable. Get a big old glass of water. If you don't know who I am, my name's Riverboat Jack. I talk about the news and politics. I'm a socialist. I'm a trans lady. And you should hit the follow button, the subscribe button, the like button, and also give me money, because I need that in order to make this show happen. Anyway, here we go. Back into the fascist den.
Any new roles created? Which positions, if any, are reserved for career federal employees, and why? Which federal employees are considered essential during a pandemic, a blizzard, or a government shutdown?
Oh man, I want MAGA folk to be deciding who is and is not essential during a pandemic. God, they're just gonna send people out there to cough in your face. They're gonna actively spread the disease.
Under what authority should non-career federal employees be hired? And what is the process for converting a Schedule C employee into a career federal employee? OPM makes crucial decisions about these sorts of things. OPM also has an important role to play when it comes to security clearances. Political appointees, especially those at the Senate-confirmed level, require security clearances to complete their jobs. OPM plays a role in the speed of this process. Because personnel is policy, as the saying goes, PPO is in many ways the key to a successful administration. But if PPO and OPM do not have alignment, there will not be any success.
So, PPO, the Presidential Personnel Office, decides who gets a job as a political appointee. And OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, makes...
Again, I feel like this guy's training me in a McDonald's video from the 90s. I can't escape it. Maybe it's like the off-colored tie. Like, I don't know what's going on here, but I don't like it.
It happened. But what does the process look like for you, the prospective appointee? Well, first, you should assess your own interests and your own qualifications. Do you believe in the president's vision? Do you believe in the agenda that he's...
She shape-shifted. We found the gender fluid. Right there.
Set out during the campaign. Or are you just looking to advance your own career? You can't be a political appointee if you don't believe in the president's vision.
Yeah, basically, if you're not a true believer, we're not going to pick you, okay? You need to be dumb as bricks and dedicated entirely to the president's vision, okay? We don't need you to be smart. We don't need you to be happy. We just need you to agree with the president to a fanatical degree, and as long as you do what you're told, everything's good. Because again, they're looking for the most fanatical death cultists available to them.
It's a tough job, too. You need to be willing to work long hours, to work on weekends. You need to be willing to implement the decisions of your bosses and not just march to the beat of your own drum. You got to be a team player for the boss, the president.
God. This guy gives me such bad vibes. It's actually really hard to articulate.
Think about what the president campaigned on. Think about what he promised the people who voted for him.
That he'd grab them by the pussy? You have to be more specific.
What do they expect from the president? And what do they expect from you? The president can't do it all on his own. He doesn't have the hours in the day. Some of it has to be...
I'm sorry, what?
The president can't do it all on his own. He doesn't have the hours in the day.
Okay, I misheard that.
Some of it has to be done by the political appointees. So what are you going to do? And what are you going to do when the media goes after you? What are you going to do when the going gets tough?
Also, we're talking about low-level, like, appointed folks who are not going to be making much money. The media is probably not going to go after you. Like, we're going to have bigger problems going on if there's a fascist takeover of America, okay?
Those are questions that you need to be asking yourself if you're interested in being a political appointee. Now, there are a few practical things that you should also know. One of which is that you're probably going to have to live in D.C. The swamp. Most
Who is this complete nothing of a person? This guy is the second in command of Project 2025, so... You know. Also, I think the only thing you really need to know about him is he's the second in command at Project 2025, and he was endorsed by an outlet based in Hungary called the Hungarian Conservative. So, you know, I think that that's basically the worst vibes you could get. That is as close as you can get in the modern day to being endorsed by, like, Francoist Spain.
Political appointments, the vast majority are located in the Washington, D.C. area, and you're going to have to relocate at least during the work week. There are a few positions like state directors at certain agencies and regional administrators at certain agencies that are located outside D.C. But for the most part, you've got to be willing to live in D.C. The second thing that you should know is that it's much easier in all areas of the federal hiring process if you haven't broken the law. So, obey.
Look, we really wanted to get the January 6th boys back together, but unfortunately, it's a lot easier to get appointed if you haven't broken the law. So if you're a felon, maybe don't apply. This is like cartoonishly insane, right? Like, this is... I hope we get, like, in 10 years, okay? If we wind up in the good timeline, I want a Parks and Rec, like, mockumentary show about this entire time period. Because it would be incredible. It would be incredible. You would barely have to even write jokes, you know?
Obey the law, and we will have fewer problems with background checks and paperwork for the hiring process. And then the only thing I would say that completely precludes you from serving a president as an appointee is if you don't agree with the president's vision. If you're going to wreck, undermine, and take cheap shots at the president or at other people in his administration, then you definitely cannot be a political appointee.
God, Don't be mean to the president. He's got feelings. He might cry.
I also recommend that you familiarize yourself with the Plum Book, which I mentioned earlier. It will give you an idea of what positions are available for political appointees.
He's not saying that for any actual reason. He's just having like Nom-like flashbacks to when he got bullied in high school for being a nerd, like a hateful nerd.
What titles they have, what kinds of positions they are. It'll also give you a little bit of an indication about pay. Now, most federal employees are paid along the general schedule, or the GS, and it's a good approximation of what you'll expect to make as a political appointee. Note that in DC, there is locality pay, which reflects the fact that it's more expensive to live here than in most of America. But also remember that PPO decides how much to pay its appointees within the scope of the law. And you are not going to be on the normal federal hiring process, and you aren't necessarily going to be on the GS scale, the GS schedule. But it's a good approximation of what you can expect.
I feel like he's literally being like, you can't be a poor MAGA supporter if you're gonna do this, okay? You've got to have some money. you gotta have some money, because we're not gonna pay you enough to live here, all right? We might be fascists backed by billionaires, okay? But we're not gonna pay you money. That's for us.
If you're making millions of dollars a year in the private sector, then you're certainly going to get a pay cut if you become a political appointee.
Yeah, you know, the vast majority of people interested in this are making millions of dollars a year in the private sector. Uh-huh.
If you're just about to graduate college and looking for your first job, then being a political appointee might seem like a lot of money. And then, of course, there's everybody in between. But you and your family should have realistic expectations regardless.
Are you a high schooler who's currently flipping burgers at McDonald's? This might be a great opportunity for you.
And you should familiarize yourself with the general schedule and the Washington, D.C. locality pay. If you want to be an appointee, I also recommend that you network.
This guy hasn't talked to like a working class person in like 20 years.
Network,
and that's
network,
being generous.
network. Everything in DC is about who you know. So get involved in politics, volunteer for candidates and causes you care about, go to happy hours, go to events at conservative
Get absolutely blasted at the local bar.
organizations and on Capitol Hill. And always treat others with respect, because you never know in Washington where your next job is going to come from.
Unless they're trans. Or some other kind of minority that you can get away with being racist to. Because we're conservatives.
It's not unusual at all to work for someone who was once your intern. So, when you're being considered for a political appointment, you're going to interview with PPO, the Presidential Personnel Office. Let's assume that you're not being considered for a cabinet level role. You'll probably meet with 1 to 2 PPO staff who have a certain portfolio, and they're going to interview you for a position.
Your local wife swapping
Sometimes
circle.
they are considering you for a specific position.
Honestly, I feel like that's a little too on the nose. I feel like that would be actual functional advice here. All right? These Republican folks are definitely like people who are on the down low and trying to spice things up in their marriage. Okay? They're definitely people who like the kind of folks who have like a threesome and suddenly their wife leaves them for like another woman. You know, and then they double down on the homophobia. All right, let's go.
They have you as a candidate in mind, and sometimes they're just getting to know you and figuring out your qualifications and trying to determine where you would best fit in the administration. Caitlin and I have done hundreds of these interviews. In addition to...
Wait, so I from Foxbat. So I legitimately got my first paid political position hanging out in a Hillel and getting shouted at, anyone want the job, then showing up to the interview and telling them that my great-grandpa worked for the right-wing terrorist organization. What? Damn. Oh, in the Irgun. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. I did not know what terrorist organization you were talking about. That's crazy.
The typical questions that you're going to get asked at any job interview, PPO is probably also going to ask you to describe your political views, to talk about what attracts.
Honestly, at a certain point, they're probably going to wind up taking anyone who applies to this. They're just trying to dissuade, like, undesirables from applying, you know?
You to the president's campaign. PPO is going to ask you to talk about what you want to do on behalf of the president at the relevant agency. PPO also might ask you to name some public figures or other politicians whom you admire, who you look up to. That's all part of the PPO interview process. As in any interview, it's important to remember to put yourself in the other person's shoes. You know, when I was interviewing people on behalf of President Trump, he wasn't there. So I had to ask myself, what would the president want me to ask this person? What would he?
Did you unironically do a WWDJTD?
He say if he were sitting right here? What is he looking for in this kind of position? No one is entitled to just work for the president. PPO has to make that decision. I will also say that everybody who comes before PPO will be treated with respect. PPO will act with integrity. PPO will put themselves in the other person.
Look, guys, Donald Trump had no idea about all of this.
Shoes as well. Now, there's just a side note here. You know, it can feel like a big deal to be interviewing at the White House for a job, to be talking to somebody who represents the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. But think about all the people who...
It can feel like a big deal, but you know what? Fuck it. Have you considered just fuck it?
Came before you, and think about all the people who will be political appointees well into the future. It's a real honor to be considered to work for the president, and I hope that I never lose the sense of awe that I had when I spoke for the president, when I interviewed people on his behalf. The bottom line is that if you're smart, if you're willing to work hard, and if you share the values of the president, PPO is going to like you, and PPO is going to get you into the administration one way or another.
Again, to clarify, they don't want smart people, okay? They don't want smart people. They want, like, uneducated rubes who will do what they're told.
We'll find you the right seat on the bus, but it's important to get people onto the bus.
We'll find you the right seat on the bus? Oh boy, Republicans don't want to be talking about that. Holy shit. Oh boy. Buddy!
Early in an administration, the right people. PPO also is going to support you as an appointee.
We'll find you the right seat on the bus.
That's what PPO likes to do. It likes to support the best appointees, promote the best appointees, and hear what they're doing at their agencies to advance the president's agenda. Remember, it's also possible that PPO will want to re-interview all of its appointees. There's always high turnover in administrations, and people move around between agencies frequently, especially between a president's first and second term or after the midterm elections, things like that. Think about this from PPO's perspective. Does PPO want to interview you one time, give you a job, and then never hear from you again? Or does PPO want to interview you, give you a job, and form a relationship with you and learn about what you're doing?
Form a relationship with you. Maybe, you know, come over to your place to see what you and your wife are into, you know? And, you know, maybe PPO wants to look at you from across the bar and say, hey, my wife and I like your vibe. You know, maybe PPO wants to do that.
Through your work at an agency to advance the president's agenda.
Cavalier.
I think it's the second one. After your PPO interview, if PPO selects you, your information will be sent to the White House Liaison's office at the
And at the office, we'll put your keys into a bowl of all the other people's keys. And then we'll play a fun game where we just find each other's keys. It's a key party. It's a totally normal thing that we do all the time here up on the Hill.
relevant agency. White House liaisons are chosen by PPO to be PPO's eyes and ears at various federal agencies.
PPO's
There's
eyes and
usually
ears?
a liaison, a deputy, and several other staff. It's the liaison from the White House to the agency, not the other way around. When PPO indicates that a candidate is a choice for a position, the White House liaison's office starts the paperwork. It's an exciting time. So how long does it take?
Basically
Well,
Christmas.
it depends. One of the things I'm most proud of is that during my time in the Trump administration, we greatly reduced the time it took to get people started in political appointments. Early on, it took months and months. In my own case, it was 9 months from the time I first interviewed until I started at an agency. But later on, with PPO and White House liaisons on the same page, we were working much faster. And one of the great things about Project 2025 is if we're successful, we're going to be in a position to get thousands of people hired into the new administration in the very first days, just like the Biden administration did, and unlike the bureaucratic delays that often hamper conservative hiring efforts. As long as we have a strong PPO,
Yeah, because this is all about taking over the bureaucracy. Yeah, we get it. We understand. We've heard like 3 hours of this so far.
White House liaisons and deputy White House liaisons, and strong aligned political leadership at the Office of Personnel Management, it won't take more than a few weeks to get you started. Of course,
Someone explain to me the bus thing. Look, there's a very famous lady named Rosa Parks, all right? And conservatives back in her day wanted her to sit in the back of the bus because she was black. And I feel like the rest of that is pretty self-explanatory.
I should say, if you are nominated for a Senate-confirmed position, I can't exactly predict what the Senate will do. But part of Project 2025 is we're going to come up with confirmation and nomination strategies, horse trading with senators to get our people confirmed.
Horse trading. Is Vosh involved in this? Is he being recruited? The sweet siren neighing of Washington?
Confirmed as quickly as possible. As an appointee, you'll definitely want to get to know your White House liaison. White House liaisons are a great resource. They can get you additional staff, they can help you do your job, and they're always working with PPO and political leadership at the Office of Personnel Management to give the president the personnel he deserves. Project 2025 will be hosting a White House liaison school in the near future, and I encourage all of you to watch that training as well. It's been
Don't worry,
debated
we will.
in various conservative administrations over the years, loyalty versus experience. There are good arguments that loyalty and ideology in political appointees are more important than experience. President Nixon supposedly
Yeah, it's almost like you're looking for, barely competent rubes in order to fulfill your agenda because you don't care who is actually appointed as long as they're a warm body and capable of, dialing numbers on a telephone.
said that he preferred experienced people. President Reagan rejected this false dichotomy. While it's true that different administrations have different priorities, one thing is
It's really weird how they continually put up Reagan on a pedestal and dude, his brain was soup. Halfway into his first term. What do you mean? Yeah, how wise he was when he was being manipulated with candy.
clear. If a president gets the wrong personnel who are not loyal to his agenda, he will pay a steep price. We've seen that over and over again. If you want to be a political appointee, you can be a political appointee.
Yeah.
If you're aligned
Velvet, that does irk me somewhat. They're going to put Donald Trump up on a pedestal like he was one of the greatest state statesman in American history. They're gonna be talking about him like he's this legendary political figure, and he's like the biggest dipshit we've ever seen.
With the president. You don't need a master's in public policy. You don't need to have spent your career in Washington, D.C. You don't need to have written 40 academic articles. You don't need to have litigated billion-dollar cases or argued in front of the Supreme Court.
You don't need to have written any articles. You could literally come from bumfuck nowhere and we won't care. Just do what you're told, idiot.
The career federal HR bureaucrats don't decide who's qualified to be a political appointee. PPO decides who's qualified to be a political appointee. The president was elected by the people to exercise the executive authority vested in him by the Constitution. He outsources some of that authority to PPO, and PPO hires political appointees who are going to get the president's work done. So, what can you do? Well, the short answer is go to project2025.org today. Fill out our questionnaire. Send us your resume. Get in touch with us.
Hey guys, it'd be a real shame if a bunch of you did this. It'd be a real shame if you wasted their time by sending them fake resumes. Definitely don't do that.
The long answer is get more involved in Project 2025. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we have a policy book that will be released in the spring of 2023. Read it. If you agree with it, you'll feel right at home in our personnel database, which you can again find at project2025.org.
Look, guys, this is the long game. I'm secretly training you all to participate in this fascist takeover, okay? So by the end of this, I want you all to go sign up for Project 2025. Okay? A resume from Real Resume.
If you like this training video, we're going to be doing a lot more, and I hope you'll watch them. Once you've read the book, put yourself in the database, and gotten trained up, we're going to put you to work. We need people to draft executive orders, draft regulations, and think about personnel strategies, nomination strategies, and confirmation strategies across the federal government.
That would be fascinating.
Only then will we be ready on January 20th, 2025. Okay? Think about the issues that will face the administration that takes office in 2025. Think about what our country will look like in 2025. Think about what you like to do. Are you a policy person? Are you good at administrative stuff?
Yeah, just real quick, want to back this up real quick. Okay?
The federal government. Only then will we be ready on January 20th, 2025. Think about the issues that will face the administration that takes office in 2025. Allow people to draft executive orders, draft regulations, and think about personnel strategies, nomination strategies, and confirmation strategies across the federal government.
Yeah, you know, this gigantic conglomeration of think tanks funded by private interests really wants to have a direct hand in crafting all of these regulations and executive orders, guys. What could go wrong? I mean, when in American history has a corporation put its profits above the well-being of small towns across America, or say the water supplies of entire regions, or, you know, anything like that? Why, corporations simply have our best interests at heart. Why, I don't think you could name a single example of a corporation doing anything to harm the good and righteous people of America.
Only then will we be ready on January 20th, 2025. Think about the issues that will face the administration that takes office in 2025. Think about what our country will look like in 2025.
Okay, Cancer Alley, that was a fluke, okay? That was just several companies all accidentally dropping a lot of toxic waste into the atmosphere and the rivers and the soil, okay? That was a horrible accident that none of them intended.
Think about what you like to do. Are you a policy person? Are you good at administrative stuff? Do you like human resources or information technology? There are political appointments in all of those categories. If you like to travel, maybe Advance would be good for you because the president and the secretaries take a lot of cool trips. If you want to be in political communications, you're halfway there already if you're a good writer. Have you worked previously on Capitol Hill? Have you worked for a governor or state legislators? There are a lot of political appointments where that experience can come in handy. As long as you share the values that must drive the next administration. As long as
you adhere to our very, very loose standards.
willing to work long hours on behalf of the president and his priority. And as long as you demonstrate courage under fire and a proven track record of holding firm under pressure, you can be a political appointee. You can bring the conservative change.
Yeah, honestly, Dragonfly, I feel like if you read off this if you got like a charismatic actor to read off the transcript of everything he said here, it would be a top tier parody of like a fascist organization in Fallout. You know, like if you added like some theatrical enunciation in here, you know?
To Washington that we all need.
Some asides.
Visit project2025.org today and put yourself in contention for a role in the next administration. Thank you so much for watching this training video. I hope you'll stay involved in Project 2025 and spread the word to your friends and family. Thank you.
Spread the word to your friends and family. You heard it, friends. Consider joining Project 2025 today. So, yeah, basically what we all witnessed here was him articulating in the most boring way imaginable how they intend to recruit people and appoint them in strategic positions to systematically destroy the bureaucracy that makes our government function. And I know that wasn't the most exciting thing, so I'm going to regale you with an account of how Vin Diesel got into acting, and hopefully that will make up for a little bit of it. So apparently, Vin Diesel's first acting gig, if you didn't know this, was in a stage play when he was 7 years old for a play called, I think it's Dinosaur Door. And he got the job because he broke into a theater with his friends in order to vandalize one of the sets. And he was caught prior to actually being able to accomplish this. He and his friends were caught. And rather than call the police on these young children, one of the theater folks offered them positions in the play. And kept them busy, got him off the street, and started his lifelong love of acting. Did he play a dinosaur egg? That's adorable. That's adorable. You know the guy who caught Vin Diesel? That's pretty cool.